Hello there, welcome to the Airgun Gear Show. In this episode, we're going to do a little bit of science. We're going to bust the odd myth, and we're going to start out by having a little quiz just between us. I'm going to show you two cans being shot, and I want you to tell me which one has got the fastest moving projectile. Very simple, of course. Here we go. Now, was it number 1 or number 2? Which one had the fastest moving projectile? I'll play them again for you. Now, you have no idea how fast that ammo is going down range, but I do, because I've got the FX True Ballistic Chronograph. And in this episode, I'm going to use this little wonder gadget to answer a question which has been burning in the backs of many people's minds for a long time. Do slugs actually go faster downrange than pellets? Now, there's all sorts of other questions we can get onto when it comes to that topic.
Has it got more power? Do they expand more? What's the accuracy like?
I can't answer any of them in one video. All I can do is find out, do slugs get downrange faster than a pellet? And if so, on average, by how much? Here we go then. This video is sponsored by Airgun101.com, the best place to see the latest videos from the best creators in the world. It's free to go and watch and subscribe. Please visit airgun101shop.co.uk for all the latest gadgets and gizmos from the airgun world. That's the legal bit. Shall we carry on? It's a fairly simple setup. I've got some rifles, I've got lots of different types of ammo, I've got a chronograph, lots of cameras, which you're watching me on now, hello, and I've got my range. I'm going to shoot 5 shots of each pellet or slug down range, and then take the average from the numbers the chronograph gives me. So that's going to be 2.2 high power, 2.5 high power, 30 high power, 2.2 sub 12, and 1.77 sub 12. And in that 1.77 sub 12, I'm going to shoot 2 different types of pellets and slugs because I've got 2 different matching weights. It's that simple. Now, the video is made possible because slug manufacturers and pellet manufacturers are now making ammo that roughly, within a few decimal places, weighs the same, if that makes any sense. So, for example, the JSB Exact redesigns in 2.2 are 25.39 grains, and the H&N slugs in 2.2 are 25 grains. So within a few decimal places, you've got ammo that pretty much matches each other's weight. Now, there are some people out there that will say 0.39 difference between the slug and the pellet. No. The whole experiment is invalid. Well, in these circumstances, I like to consult the Book of Waah, because the Book of Waah generally has some very wise words for questions such as these. So if I read it, page 72, line 9, it says, "Look, darling, why don't you just give it a go? Because actually, you might quite enjoy it." And I'm going to take those wise words from the Book of Waah, and I'm going to carry on. So am I going to cover every slug weight and pellet weight out there on the market? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do the ones that I've been able to get my hands on where the weights closely match with each other. And again, I'm going to consult the Book of Waah, where it clearly says that life is an experiment. Just like marriage, it can be a happy one, especially when you have 2 nearly equals working together. And it gives an example for those 2 nearly equals of Dumb and Dumber. There we go. Wise words there from the Book of Waah. But let's stop consulting what I would regard as a very intelligent piece of writing, and shall we just get to the shooting? The chronograph is only given the ammo weight as information, nothing else. And I'm using the app on my phone to collect data and screenshots for the video. I line it all up and I just shoot collecting data and recording footage. Now, I'm not going to subject you to the days of testing, video recording, editing, carrying everything, running around, getting hot, no dinner, the national pizza crisis of May 2023, and that's me not seeing one for nearly 4 weeks now. No, you don't have to do any of that. You just sit there on your bum and I will do all the work for you and bring you the results. Here we go then. At last I hear you cry. Yeah, you're not the only one. I've been doing this for nearly 3 weeks. I'm going to speed all this up. Firstly, 2.2 high power, and we are running a Mark III impact with a 700mm barrel, and I'm using the JSB redesigns 25.39 grain versus the H&N 25 grain slugs. That's it, data got, move on. Next is the 2.5 Crown high power 600mm barrel, and it's the early, very early Mark II version. In fact, you couldn't even call it the Mark II, but it kind of is. I'm using the JSB King Heavies Mark II 33.95 grains versus the Zan 33 grain slugs. Data got, let's move on. Next is the 30 cal FX Impact 700mm barrel M3. I am using the JSB Exact 44.75 grain versus the FX Hybrid Slug 44.5 grain. That's it, data got, move on. Now I'm simply after the muzzle out to 106 yards score. I've got 15 and 25 yards in the chrono, but to gather any more data would cause the video to be longer than it already is. So I'm only worried about muzzle to 106 yard scores. And if you don't like it, the Book of Waah will give you an answer. Now I have to admit, watching some bloke shoot a load of pellets and slugs at 100 yards or 50 yards or whatever, is not the most entertaining thing in the world. Just trying to show you off the fancy new chronograph and what it can do. However, the results that we're getting really are quite interesting, so do stick around for them. It actually, I think, is worth it. But I will admit that after sort of like a couple of hours of doing this, not only am I probably quite badly sunburnt, I've just started shooting the rifle generally downrange. So I've been in the cupboard and I found some classic American wine, and I'm going to put a few of those out at 100 yards and fire a few shots and see what would happen. Yeah, science is good, but sometimes you got to get out of that classroom, ain't you? Oh my word. That is just, wow. Oh. That's like 100 yards away. One more. My microphone is going to be getting so wet. Wow. Just wow. Do you a quick damage report here. I mean, so I picked the tins up. There's one tin. Now, that's a slug going, I'll tell you how fast a little bit later, but it's a 2.2 slug, 106 yards, and it is literally separating the tins. I mean, that's devastation. That's fantastic. But anyway, like I say, how fast was it going when it got here? Hang around, because I'm going to tell you. But I've had a bit of fun, so now let's get back to the science. The sub 12, which is up next, I want muzzle to 50 yards. The rifles are tuned for pellets, and I will explain that in the studio shortly, so hang on. First, in sub 12, Impact M3 177 500mm barrel, JSB 844 grain pellets, 4.52 head, versus the lead-free Zans 8.5 grains. Data got, move on. Next is the sub 12 Impact M3 177 500mm barrel, JSB 10.34 grain pellet versus the Zan Slug 10 grain. Data got, move on. Finally, in the sub 12, it's the Impact M3 500mm barrel in 2.2, JSB 15.89 grain pellet versus the Zan 15 grain lead-free slug. That's it. Hurrah! Data got. Back to the studio. Now, remember, I have done my best to match the weight of the ammo, pellet and slug, as close as manufacturers make. A few decimal points of grains may come into it, but overall, I don't think that makes a huge difference. So, to be clear, this is equivalent weight of pellet versus slug, or as close as I can get. So here are the results. High power first, taken on a 5-shot average from muzzle to 106 yards, because that's how long my range is. All guns are factory stock with no special extras, and I have attempted to match muzzle velocities where I can. Starting with the 2.2 high power, comparing the JSB redesigned 25.39 pellets with the H&N 25 grain slugs. And the slug is on average 95.6 feet per second faster at the 100-yard point. Next is the 2.5. Now, I struggled to get the Crown to match equal velocities at the muzzle. It was tricky. I got as close as I could, with the slugs travelling an average 55.2 feet per second faster at 106 yards. Now, I know I have accurate data, as I got an exact matching muzzle velocity, clearly showing the ammo was tracked. To show that that rough average and how the slug was travelling faster is actually good data. That's a bit of a waffle of words, but I think I got good data. Next is the 30 cal. Now this is a heavyweight pellet and slug combination, and the slug is going an average 139.2 feet per second faster at 106 yards. And that's quite a big number, especially for the size of ammo. Right, UK sub 12 foot-pounders, here we go. All guns are standard set for pellets, and I'm shooting from muzzle to 50 yards because it's sub 12. I did not match the muzzle velocity, as I cannot recommend anyone goes adjusting slug ammo to legal speed limits. We have tricky laws, so the guns in sub 12 are set for pellets. Then I just put the slugs in and shot. Again, I do not think this changes the results, but it actually highlights them. To start with then, 177 sub 12, 844 grain JSB pellets versus Zan lead-free 8.5 grain slugs. The slug out to 50 yards was 69.8 feet per second average faster in retained speed. That's retained. However, because of our laws using a pellet tune on the rifle at 50 yards, the pellet was actually going faster than the slug downrange. But even though the slug left the barrel slower, it retained more speed downrange. So the slug was going slower to start with, but lost less speed downrange overall, if that kind of makes sense. 177 sub 12 JSB 10.34 grain pellets versus Zan 10 grain slugs. With the heavier pellet and slug at 50 yards, the slug was on average faster by 52.2 feet per second in retained speed, and by just a few feet per second was slightly quicker at 50 yards. Yep, the slug also left the barrel slower, but it retained overall more speed than the pellet. You've got to get your head around that. Retained speed. 2.2 sub 12 JSB 15.89 grain pellets versus Zan 15 grain lead-free slugs. Yes, again, this is lead-free versus lead, but the weights match, and one is a slug and one is a pellet. The slug, again, is on average faster by 57.4 feet per second in retained speed. And at 50 yards, it's actually going faster than the pellet. Now, I wanted to look at the 844 grain pellet versus the 8.5 grain slug in sub 12 and stretch that to 106 yards, because while at closer range, the pellet was faster in actual speed. However, By the time it gets to 106 yards, the slug is going faster. And overall, it's going an average of 106.2 feet per second faster in retained speed. However, the arrival speed of both the pellet and the slug are similar. So which is the winner with this one? Well, science kind of says the slug, but only by approximately 10 feet per second. But it leaves the barrel slower. So remember, that bigger number is actually the retained part. So what do I conclude? Well, go look at the numbers. I will put them in a blog on airgun101shop.co.uk. It'll be at the bottom of the page. They are interesting. I've tried to match pellet and slug weight and do the shot comparison. So to answer the question, which is faster, pellet or slug? Wow, slugs every time, except for the 177 sub 12 844 grain JSBs out to 50 yards. The pellet is the winner. It's kind of strange that. Now I hear you sub 12 shooters screaming, but the 844 grain JSB pellet is faster. Rah, 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 rah. What's all this retained rubbish? Well, yes, you are absolutely correct. But the slug slows down less than the pellet, which is the retained speed. I shall again consult the Book of Waah, which on page 72, line 21 says, to retain is to keep or maintain. Thus, you can always buyeth your own crony machine thingy and you can do some testing yourself. Pellet or slug, it's going to have a drag effect working on it, and that's called the BC, ballistic coefficient. So all the ammo I tested is going to slow at a consistent rate. So shooting it faster will make it faster downrange, but it will still slow at the same rate. And thus, the difference in speed between the pellet and the slug of the same rough weight should, if my science is right, always be roughly the same. However, you have to take into account air density, temperature and altitude, amongst other things. It will make a difference to your results. Will you be able to exactly match the BC numbers I get? No, probably not, unless you're sat next to me when you're testing. Science is good, isn't it? You see, Adam Savage would be proud of me if he was watching me, which he's not. With this chronograph, you can now find out exactly how fast your ammo is going, giving you greater tuning knowledge for pellets and for slugs, and maybe the winning edge, or maybe not if you shoot like me. Plus, you can now get that instant BC number. The bigger the number, the slower the rate of slow down on the ammo. Wink, wink. See? Because that's what people like. Slow rate. It looks like I'm having some sort of a spasm, doesn't it? To answer the question that I posed right at the start of the video, which was faster from the two can shots, well, I can tell you, it was the slugs. They were doing 742 feet per second at 75 yards, as opposed to the pellet, which was doing 606 feet per second at 75 yards. However, from the footage that you can see, whatever you're hitting at that distance isn't going to know a lot of difference. That's it, science over. But I've actually learnt a lot. And no, I did not cover accuracy. That is a whole different ball game. But what I have told you is which ammo is giving you more speed and by how much. But it's going to vary across all the different shapes and sizes of ammo. I have just done a comparison where I can get a pellet weight to match a slug weight as close as I can. And actually, you now know more than you did before you started watching this video. So I've educated you. Well, that's it. My job is done. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon. Ta-ra.